The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now.
And welcome to The Factor Uncensored. Our minds are still on Uvalde tonight. A viral video shows just how desperate and frustrated parents were that day. You can hear them beg and plead with officers to rush inside of that elementary school.
You know that they're kids, right? They're little kids. They don't know how to defend themselves. 6-year-old kids in there. They don't know how to defend themselves from a shooter.
Now, the investigation is still underway, but there are now confirmed reports that from 40 minutes to an hour, law enforcement officers didn't engage the suspect at the school until backup arrived. That's even despite them knowing the shooter was inside the building and armed. Clearly, that was enough time for the suspect to shoot and tragically kill 19 children and 2 teachers in that school. My guests have years of law enforcement experience. They told me if those reports are true, which we're now getting confirmed, officers dropped the ball.
Chief Jimmy Dodson, your thoughts on this as a former law enforcement officer?
Well, if that is accurate, and that timeline that they have discussed is accurate, in my professional opinion, it's unacceptable. There's no reason why there couldn't have been some type of engagement. After Columbine, we were trained that the rules of engagement is the first officer on the scene, you go in immediately. You don't wait for backup. Your job is to go in and try to disable the shooter, even if it means you put your life in danger. Because the more you wait, the longer you wait, the more bodies are going to pile up. And I think that could have been the case. But again, I wasn't there. I don't want a Monday morning quarterback, but based upon what eyewitnesses on the scene stated, that is unacceptable if that was the case.
Is it possible, Chief, that no matter how well trained you are, how many skills you get, how many drills you run through, when you're actually dealing with a situation like this, an active shooter, is there a possibility you forget some of that? You freeze up. You're wondering about your loved ones. And I know many of the law enforcement officers had kids in that school. Is it possible you could just forget what you've learned and just get caught up in the moment, not only as a law enforcement officer, but as a parent as well?
Well, humanly speaking, yes, but that's why you train. You train to respond so that when that time comes, you don't have to rely on your emotions, you rely on your training. And that's the reason why we constantly make sure that our officers are trained properly over and over and over again for situations such as this. Now, there's going to be some situations you'll never be trained for, but between your training and your instinct when it kicks in, the first thing is to save lives, no matter what the cost is. You have to go in and save lives.
Gregory Dupree, former Houston police officer, now security and safety consultant. If that timeline is accurate, 40 minutes to an hour before engaging and stopping the shooter, we know he tried to get in the front of the school, ran into the back of the school. There were officers already out there. Your thoughts on that, if that timeline is accurate?
Okay, and that's a big if. And you're right, Isaiah. If that timeline is accurate, I agree wholeheartedly with what the chief said. As you know, I was also a police officer in Aurora, Colorado at the time Columbine took place. And as a matter of fact, we were one of the agencies that was called out to assist. But as a result, and what was interesting about Columbine is that numerous agencies responded, and they did not wait for a coordinated effort. Some of those agencies took it upon themselves to enter the school because some of these officers had kids in the school. So they didn't take the time to wait, for some type of strategy to be put in place to go and enter the school. Now, as a result, we had a law enforcement briefing for all the agencies that were involved in Columbine. And one of the things that came out of it was just what the chief said. We changed from a static static strategy where we would just sit and wait on the suspect or wait for SWAT to come in and handle the situation. And we switched to a dynamic strategy or dynamic entry. this is how equipping officers with AR-15s in the vehicle came about. And they told us, from now, if you run up on a situation like that, don't wait for anybody. Once you have 2 officers, you make entry, and they gave us the equipment to do so.
But Chief, when you also look at the video of the family members, the parents trying to get into the school, you do have to have officers out there, though, to set the perimeter, to make sure everyone doesn't just run into that school, right?
Well, yeah, but only if you've already got officers inside the school.
Got it.
Have officers inside the school, what good does it do to set up a parameter? Because every second that you allow that shooter in there, there's lives that are being taken. So the parameter could have easily been abolished and went inside the school, or deputize somebody to say, keep them from backing out, coming in, because we're going in and we don't want any more innocent lives lost. So again, based upon what I saw, and again, I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback, but when you see that and you see officers that are there keeping the citizens back and nobody's engaged in the process of the shooter. Now, again, I don't know if that's the case or not, but if it is the case, then there's got to be some explaining done.
And Gregory Dupree, once again, one of the things we also heard, and they're reporting, and we know this is pretty factual, that the shooter was taken out by a Border Patrol agent. Border Patrol, I think, was stationed 40 miles away. What does that tell you? And I'm not sure if that agent was stationed at the time 40 miles away, but we know they got there after many of the local law enforcement arrived on the scene. But what does that tell you that a Border Patrol agent moved in and took out the shooter?
That tells me just what the chief alluded to earlier, that officer or Border Patrol officers, they acted on their instinct, because Border Patrol is not trained to make entry into schools or any type of building like that. So they took it upon themselves to to enter that school and stop the threat, because they knew how dangerous it would be to allow that suspect to continue to do what he was doing. So that's when your instincts and your training kick in and you do what you have to do.
Well, gentlemen, we want to thank you for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored tonight. And our hats off for law enforcement officers all around the country who put their lives on the line every day. Obviously, we'll have to let this play out and see what an investigation will show down the road. Thank you all for joining us here tonight.